I'm a motherfucking beast, girl. In this jungle out here, beware. When you see me in these motherfucking streets, girl. Like I don't even care, be clear. I'ma tell you exactly what you wanna hear sometimes. I'ma mean that shit sometimes. I won't mean that shit, I'm trying to find a way to beat that shit. Tell you exactly what you wanna hear, and I'ma have fun with it. Give me your heart and I'll run with it. Give it back in pieces when I'm done with it.
What up, everybody? I'm sorry for the long hiatus. It is not my fault. If you see Damo on the street, aka D Renee, holla at her because she took so many months off. Now she is an entrepreneur. She has a great business line and she's doing big things. So I wanted to talk to somebody. So I said, let me tag in my son, my young adult son, because the show is called The Relationship DNA. His name just happened to be Destin. So it's still D and A. So what's up, Destin? Welcome to the show. How you doing?
Thank you for having me, Dad. Doing well.
Glad you were able to be here. So this is an interesting topic. When I spoke to you about this, you said you wouldn't mind talking about manhood. So folks, today's topic is a boy can't grow to be a man without seeing one. Hashtag manhood. So Destin, when you hear that title, the way it's phrased up, what comes to mind?
When I hear manhood, I see a father, a grandfather, a leader, someone with power and respect.
Is there any definitions that you have for yourself when it comes to manhood? And how does that compare to what society says manhood is?
My personal definition of manhood would be a man who can take care of himself on his own, not dependent on anybody but himself. And compared to the society's point of view of a man would be the protector and provider of the family, who goes to work, comes home while the wife is at home cleaning, cooking, taking care of kids.
Well, the number
basically
one thing,
the breadwinner.
Great. The number one thing I always taught you is everybody has a different definition, standard for everything. There's no universal one word answer unless you're in school, because school teaches you this is the question, repeat the answer. But when it comes to being an adult, there is no real blueprint. Everybody's going to have a different path, a different experience, and it's never failure. It's just life lessons. And you always want to try to figure out how you can make life either easier for yourself or easier for the next generation, your kids, your grandkids coming forward. So you are now 19 and you'll be 20 this year. So time goes fast. How do you feel about your maturation to manhood from when you were a teenager to now being a young adult?
I believe I take things more serious than when I did when I was younger. Like recently with music, I'm starting to take it more serious, write things out, talk to my cousins about it. Like whenever I have an idea, I'll write it down and I'll like pitch it to somebody, whether it be you, my cousin, maybe my little circle of people, but I don't normally like to go to them like that. So mostly family. And I'm starting to get used to the real world, being an adult, working on people respecting me as the adult I am, stuff like that.
Well, respect is something that sometimes is given and sometimes earned. So it'll take you defining what you want people to see you as when it comes to respect. What should they respect? What aspects should they respect? What's respect are you gonna say you want versus what are you gonna command or demand from people? So always want to be respected, but if not, you need to be able to recognize when the respect isn't there. And also take note of two things in life, respect and fear. I taught you those lessons a long time ago, that if somebody doesn't respect you and somebody doesn't fear you, then all cards are off the table, because either you respect me enough not to cross the line with me, or you fear what I might do in retaliation. So always remember those principles as you navigate the world. So one thing I wanted to talk about was the topic is manhood, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think makes a man a man?
To take responsibility for one's own actions, to always be a man of their word, to not, well, this would probably be repeating myself, but to not shift the blame onto other people's for your own mistakes and flaws, stuff like that.
Well, those are some good principles. So what to me, what makes a man is somebody who kind of stands on their word,
Mm-hmm.
has values, has principles that they won't bend for financial gain or for a partnership, businessship, or anything like that, situationship, but somebody just
Mm-hmm.
stands on their grounds and morals. I also think that what makes a man is having a plan. There's one thing that everybody benefits from, and that's having a plan. Society says that men are the provider, men are supposed to make things happen. So as a man in this structure of society, you should always have a plan. You should never rely on somebody to guide you or make your plans for you. You should always have a plan and ask for help or assistance along the way, but not just rely on other people to make it happen. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So in terms of being a man, I have done my best to try to always make a connection with people in terms of this is how I want to be spoken to. This is how I want to be communicated to. Have you ever felt like there was a communication gap or conversation with either another adult or family member because they still see you as the young child that grew up and not as the young man that you are today?
Yeah, still now with some members of my family, I see that.
Okay, without giving too much information, do you want to just give a scenario or situation so that some of the listeners might be able to understand the situation?
I remember one time I was at one of my family members' houses and I had said something along the line, like I gave my opinion on something that they disagreed on, and they said I was being disrespectful. And I'm like, how am I being disrespectful? I'm just giving my opinion. That doesn't mean I'm trying to put any malice towards you or hurt your feelings by saying what I said.
Well, always remember too, as I give you permission, you can challenge anybody on a statement or a
Mm-hmm.
position with respect in your delivery and your tone. It's never disrespectful as an adult to give your opinion or voice your opinion as long as it's in a good tone and in a clear cut delivery. Because if you have a better position in displaying your argument, then you
Mm-hmm.
might win most of the discussions over any adult, any age. But I always
Yeah.
want you to be able to learn how to speak up for yourself, pick out the flaws in people's arguments, and be able to present it to make them realize where they're wrong. There's a lot of good things in discussion and argument is making people feel stupid with their own words without you saying nothing. I enjoy those intelligent debates with some people where I'm able to just point out all the flaws in their structure and stuff like that. So just continue to always stand firm and not be afraid of the back and forth as long as it doesn't get out of hand. And anytime you're seeing it getting too hot and heavy or the temperature's flaring with family, you can always walk away. You know that
Yeah.
you said what you had to say. You can revisit it when everything calms down. But make sure you always speak up for yourself. All right.
All right.
What pitfalls have you experienced, or caused any delay in your feelings of becoming a man today?
Um, Recently with some of my, it still happens now with some of my cousins, they still like treat me like I'm their age. Like even if it's not that big of an age gap, I still feel like I should be respected instead like, oh, Destin, you're just this. You're just this. And you'll just always be this. I'm like, man, nobody got time.
So you're saying these are younger cousins?
Yeah.
Well, the one thing I would tell you is you are considered the firstborn in a lot of spaces of your generation. So you are the oldest, you are the adult. So you're going to always have to explain that position to your younger cousins. Like, yo, we cool, we can laugh and joke, but there's still a level of respect that we got to have. Or I just can't talk to you no more because now I got to separate the cousin from the adult. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
it takes some time, but definitely always keep your position. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
All right. So you're about to turn 20, and I don't know much of your dating aspects or how deep you are, how far you are in terms of relationships with the female species. But I want to ask, what are some of the principles in dating that you think comes with being a man, and what are some principles that come with being a woman, just so I can get an understanding of where your mindset is at this age?
Some principles of dating: when you're a man, you should, always be a gentleman to the woman, always speak to her in a kind, respectful fashion. Um, never, never try to start an argument for the sake of starting an argument, because that's not going to get you nowhere. But a toxic relationship. Um, I believe as a man, if you ever have a disagreement with your significant other, you should always be willing to talk it out instead of, getting upset, cursing, doing all that extra stuff. Same thing could be said about women as well. Because if, for example, your man does something that you don't like and you get upset and you just black on him, he's gonna it's not gonna have a positive end result. Both of y'all is just gonna be mad. Instead, you could have just, talked it out like mature, grown adults. What's another one? Another one would be always keep, for both genders, always keep a clean house and home, because your house and home represents who you are as a person, where your foundation is, where your mindset is at. Like, if you're dating someone, they come over to your crib, you got a messy room, and go and think your mind is all over the place. You're lazy. You don't do nothing with your life. That you're being a bum. But if come home to a nice, organized house, they see that you at least got your mind somewhere focused on something.
That's interesting. So do you think, in the context that you just explained, having a messy house or a messy room, do you think that reflects somebody's say life environment, like because the house is or the room is chaotic, that their life might be chaotic as well?
Yes.
And you have seen that in display?
Yes.
Okay, we won't get into it because I don't know what you're going to pull out the bag. And as I always want to say, like, we want to have a conversation, but we want to make sure that we always do everything in love and respect. So I know that this might be a little too close to home, so we won't expound anymore. But I will bring it back to the notion that you said about communication during heated times. What if you, as a man that's supposed to be the head of the household, like society says, and you're trying to communicate to this partner and they just won't listen? How do you handle those situations since you haven't been there yet?
Me personally, if you're not listening, I'm gonna give you some time to calm down. But if you don't listen after the second attempt, we gotta do something. We have to come back to it another day. And if you're still not listening, then there's no point in my mind. There's no point in being in a relationship with someone who's not going to listen to me, because then you don't respect me.
Interesting. So, how many chances do you get before you say, you know what, this is too much to deal with? Do you give it 1, 2? Do you give it 6 months, a year, a few years? How long would your breaking point be?
Well, for me, it would vary for each person, depending on the personality. To be 100% honest, like if they have one of those toxic personalities, after the first time you're done. But if if they're one of those people who's like going through something, I'll give them three chances. But if we're like regular friends, I talk to you on a daily basis or a weekly, monthly basis, I'll give you two chances. After you do it that second time, that relationship is done.
So interesting. So you haven't been in like any long-term serious young relationships yet. How do you recognize a toxic trait in a person?
Mm. Well, for me, what I consider toxic traits would be getting really aggressive at the slightest, at the most little things. I guess identifying a toxic trait would be for me something that you do that gets me really upset within a short amount of time. I would identify as a toxic trait, like something that
Mm,
really pushes my buttons.
so interesting. So in all of the counseling that I give to people, I always focus on the person I'm talking to and not the mate because the mate is not there to defend themselves. So
Mhm.
in this situation, I want to point out to you, how does somebody push your buttons and you allow them to push your buttons?
Hmm. Someone currently?
No, you said because if you recognize an attacking trait of somebody, trying to push your buttons, one would ask, well, why are you allowing your buttons to be pushed?
Well, if it's the first time, I'm going to bring it up, be like, hey, I don't appreciate when you do this because it makes me feel this way. And after that first time, I tell them if they do it again, then that's done because that's a toxic trait. We don't got time for toxic relationships.
Because some therapists would say, like, why do you allow this person pushing your buttons even provoke a reaction out of you? Why even pay it any mind?
True. Sometimes, sometimes, well, I don't speak from my own experience, but I speak from seeing other people go through it. Sometimes you're not in the right headspace, so you let them push your buttons because you're in love with them. You think that they're your soulmate, so you just let them get away with it because you think this is what love is, probably from something you've seen in your household or from other family members.
So, from a young man who has seen his father married to his mother, and then his father married to your stepmother, how do you recognize the the qualities of a person when it comes to picking? Qualities that you may need, qualities you may want.
Mm. I believe that you should find all those qualities out, like during at least the first two dates, in my opinion. You ask them about their upbringing, what they do on a daily basis, what their goals and aspirations are. Um, if you it and back to what I said about houses, if you ever go to their house, you could see if that's someone you want to be with based off their house.
So, and you said two dates. So, what are three things that you need to know within the first two dates to know that these are the qualities that you want to invest your time in?
Mm, for the first day, I would since it's the first day, I wouldn't get too personal. So I'd probably ask like, how's your living situation? What are you currently doing or aspiring to do? What are your goals? Um, and maybe possibly where they live at, because sometimes also the environment of which you live could affect your mental health as well.
Uh, Sometimes people only ask the questions that they are comfortable answering. So, are these the questions that you'll be willing to give your honest answer to, or would you give the resume answer, which means I'm going to just say something that sounds right versus
Nah,
revealing my
I
true
would
self?
Now I would give the honest answer, because if you think of it like a survey, then you just lying, and then your foundation of this person will be built upon lies.
Oh. And you don't like dealing with liars?
Nope.
So, since you brought that up, men are supposed to stand on their word, right? What are
Yes.
some things that you've learned as a man that would be considered lying to yourself? What are some of the things in your life that may be considered lying to yourself?
Um, let's say that you're an alcoholic. Everybody knows you as the alcoholic. You're drinking every day, even even if there's no need for it. And you say to yourself, I'm not an alcoholic. I'm just It's just how I deal with my problems. That would be one way of lying to yourself.
Hmm.
When you see the issue in yourself and you're not addressing it, you're just brushing it off to the side.
Okay, I get that. Now I want you to give me an example of something that's not as extreme, but
Oh.
most men wouldn't even recognize that would be a lying to themselves trait.
Mm, let's see. Possibly maybe a man that's into women who have similar traits to their mother.
Hmm,
Oh.
that's an interesting one. So, sometimes I have lied to myself in the past of not managing the expectations that I have for others and myself.
Hmm.
And sometimes that creates a false reality because if you're never holding yourself to the standards that you want from others, then the outcomes are always going to be, imbalanced because you're going to expect some more from the person versus what you expect from yourself. And the person might even be doing their best, but you might be calling them out when they're doing more than you because you're oblivious to how much you procrastinate, or how much you don't clean, or how much you don't cook and stuff
Mhm.
like that. So you got to be careful with stuff like that. So, so far so good. I like your answers and your questions. So,
Thank you.
my son will eventually be a father. Are you planning to create your own parenting playbook, or are you going to mimic or repeat any of the things that I try to teach you and your siblings?
I would most likely mimic and then make my own playbook along the way.
I always say, since every person's different, every situation is going to be different, you carry some, as I always tell you, different lenses of viewing the situation. So when one lines with a pair of glasses, since you wear glasses, you got to keep changing. You got to keep changing your prescription. So every
Mhm.
time your prescription adjusts, you might see it better. So all life cycles of information is a lens that you can view it from, and every point of view has two sides. That's why it's kind of linear. I see it from this way, but the person over there sees it from this way. So can I get the other side from the other person's point of view without drawing the conclusions and stuff like that? So definitely, I would say keep the principles that you enjoyed as a child or even as a young adult that made sense to you. Keep those principles and then add to the personality of the child that you have, because you and your siblings are all different. So, with you, I can be more direct. I can sit down, we can have the man to man, and then with your sisters, I gotta come with the loving, caring delivery. I gotta speak
Mhm.
soft because you don't want to
Hurt
damage
their
their,
feelings.
yeah, you don't want to hurt their feelings, but you don't want to damage them with that uh dad complex that most people say that they have. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
I always feel like when I'm doing something to try to either correct them, discipline, or explain, I'd always fear that they grow to kind of hate the disciplinary side of me, but then attract somebody to fulfill that void. And that's the last thing I would want to do to even you picking, the wrong mate out of something that I might have done and didn't realize that it was, damaging and stuff like that. So always, try to figure out the personality of your child before you put some strict rules down. And I'll give you this example. As sports, every coach has a roster full of players, and not everybody on that roster is going to take the same criticism or yelling or cursing. So the coach has to have a good personality detector to know I can yell at him and get the best out of him, but I got to console this person and encourage them, let them know that they're still playing good, but they can do better. So that's the analogy I'll give you. Let me see. In terms of officially one day being married, do you believe in the ideology of gender roles currently at your young age of 19?
Not anymore. I did when I was younger. But honestly, seeing you perform both gender roles when after you and mom broke up, I was like, wow, my dad can. I guess the proper way would say it would be the mom and the dad at the same time.
You try to call me soft on the podcast? That's what I heard.
No.
Dad, you soft. Yeah. So what traits did I perform that you say a mother and a father do? What are some of the traits? Can you list or name some of them that you saw?
A father normally goes to work, um, mostly from what I know of gender roles. The father is normally, the breadwinner, goes to work, comes home, relaxes, while the mother is taking care of the kids while he's away, doing the homework, cooking, cleaning the house. But you do all of those. You would go to work, come home, make sure we did our homework, ask if we needed help on our homework, cook, clean, make sure we got to bed on time when we was younger, read us bedtime stories.
Yes, I took pride in being a father and a husband and a brother and a sibling. I take pride in that family aspect. And one thing I will say to you, just in case like you happen to go to this, is we try to find an identity for ourselves in this society, in this life. And sometimes you might attach to something that makes sense to you. So when you were younger and I was with your mother, I attached to just being a father and a husband, and that was my identity. But the minute that we split, I lost my identity. I was no longer a father on a regular basis. I was no longer a husband on a regular basis. And I kind of went through this soul searching path for the next few years, trying to figure out, well, who am I? And what do I like? And who do I want to be? And it takes time to try to figure yourself. That's why I always tell you and your siblings, it is so important for you to know who you are. It's so important to recognize what you love about yourself. It's also important to figure out what you hate about yourself. Because whatever you don't like, more than likely other people will see it and can use it as a weapon against you. But you have the opportunity to identify it and then change it. That's why I always tell you, what do you don't like about yourself? There's got to be something. Now, change it, work on it. How do we get this better? How do you, if you don't like your looks, how do you change your style of dress? How do you change your appearance, your haircuts, your stuff like that? If you're not in shape, how do you then motivate yourself to get in shape so that you can love who you are more? If you don't think that you can read well or read at a slow pace. Like when I was younger, I couldn't read fast. I still don't think I read fast, but I've grown to read at a better pace, and I've learned to understand and comprehend better. And when I didn't like it, I said I had to read more. And the great invention of technology is, as you can see when I went to my master's degree, computers read for you. So I learned how to turn every document I had in my master's program into a PDF so the computer could read the entire books for me. And that's how I quickly learned how to read faster, learn bigger words, and Google words as they're saying them, and get the assignment and find it online. So thank God for technology. Technology is something great. Okay. So one of my final questions is, you will be 20 this year. What aspects of manhood do you want to add before you turn 25?
Being self-dependent, so I could just get things done on my own. I actually been telling myself that since I got here. I was like, first one of the on the top of my list, I gotta become self-dependent. I don't want to depend on everybody to get things done, because I came to realize I do that a lot without even realizing it.
Mhm. Well, I will say, when you were younger, I think you kind of did shy away from conversation, shy away from responsibility, shy away from having to interact with people. And since being with me, you have grown in this short year to have some working experience, to be forced to go out on the train, go out into the world, see the world versus always being cocooned in the house and everybody wondering why. Well, why doesn't he act like this? Because he hasn't had that freedom. So now I
Yeah.
force you to say, you go do this, go learn this, go outside and do this, run over here. So I need you to get out there and not be afraid of the world. Like the one thing I always try to say to y'all is that life is interesting, but life is hard. Why is it hard? Because most of the times growing up, we're not giving the exact tools that we need to excel in life as an adult. A lot of things you learn before 18 don't really prepare you to be an adult. But with your current generation, y'all have all of these things at your fingertips. The phone does everything, video
Mm.
games, streaming, playing online. You know, people have friends all over the country they play Call of Duty with. But
Yeah.
before, we were forced to go out to the library. I don't think nobody really goes to the library anymore. We were forced to go travel and train when we played in tournaments. So imagine your father at 11 with a book bag, sneakers, and a basketball on a train going all the way out to Castle Hill to playing Castle Hill tournaments in the Bronx or playing the Kips Bay in the Bronx by myself.
Wow.
Traveling all the way downtown to like Duncan Center, 875, or going to Millbank up the block, or going all the way up to this, uptown Washington Heights to play sports. Like that's just something that we did without technology, without a phone to track you. We were just forced to go out there and try to learn how to be adults. And I think that caused us to mature faster. But I think that's also been a hindrance to the growth of your generation and your future generation because y'all gonna have so many things at your fingertips that is going to hinder how fast you can become an adult and be prepared for the ups and downs of life. So earlier today, you had sent me a text message, and it was the trucks that will be replacing all drivers because it's going to be robots or robot controlled or whatever. And I kept
Hmm.
telling you for years, I've been saying it for years, right? Like, yo, this fourth industry, industrial industry, is it's scary because they're doing their best to try to get rid of all the jobs that certain people need and can do. So you don't see no people really at the toll booths no more. You don't see
Hmm.
nobody at the train stations no more. So now
Hmm.
you're about to get rid of all of the truck drivers. You might eventually get rid of all the cab drivers because the cars can drive themselves. You
Yeah.
might eventually get rid of all of the fast food workers because they started to build robot hands that can make food. You already see
Oh
that
wow.
they implemented the kiosks. Like, go use the kiosk, don't talk to the staff now. So I'm just like,
Yeah.
so we're in this school structure, we're in this life structure that we go every day that people are actually talking about this. Now I make y'all aware of it because these are the things that I read, and I've been reading about this stuff for years. I was one of the first people to come to my neighborhood and say, "Did y'all hear about universal basic income?" And everyone's like, "No." And I'm like, "Yo, they're saying that they're gonna give us all money because the jobs are gonna fade out by 2030." And everybody thought I was full of it. Now you saw the last election, that's what they were talking about. And I'm just like, wow, like there's so much information out here that we're not privileged to. So I'm saying this to say that I want you to not be one afraid of the future, but I want you to kind of embrace the future in the sense of information is there. And as long as you're informed, you can make, as we said, a plan to survive or to avoid any shortcomings, pitfalls, any industries that are about to be taking over or reduced in staff because I only have to pay a robot now. that I can maintain with money because I'm already a billionaire company, versus paying a worker that could get sick, could get pregnant, could retire, that I have to pay medical benefits for, that I have to pay out a pension plan. Yeah, they're about to get rid of all of that. So with that being said, how do you plan on preparing your children for that future?
Have them, I guess, do what you do, what you've been doing with us. Have them write out, have them write out a plan for their future, so they can continue on the Smalls family legacy, or build, or well, yeah, continue out the Smalls family legacy.
Okay. So I'm going to say that this podcast was a good episode. I enjoyed hearing you talk. You're very mature. I'm very impressed. I look forward to seeing what you do in the future. So before we close out, we normally do like role plays and stuff like that when it's me and Damo, but she's not here. So we are going to go to what we call DNA Decoded. It's just a breakdown overview of the entire episode. So what is your last takes of the entire episode and how do you feel about it?
My last takes of the entire episode is that I want to focus on gender roles. Is that I personally don't think there should be any gender roles. I think any gender could cook, clean, be the breadwinner of the house, do it all. I personally feel that there should not be any. In my
Oh,
opinion, I don't see the purpose of
mhm.
saying, oh, this gender should only do this and it should stay that way. And this gender has to do this and only do this.
Well, you're going to have to make sure that in the future you find a like-minded person because as you see on social media, they're saying that all men need to pay for all the dates and they need to provide and they need to do this and they need to do that. And it's kind of like the old school standards when only
Mm-hmm.
men worked are being applied to this climate when everybody's working. The women of our communities are going to college more and graduating at a higher rate when it comes to men, and the expectations are still the same. So you're gonna have to actually date somebody who's aware of the real society exists and the actual numbers when it comes to statistics on how much do we actually make as Black men in entry level positions or in mid level positions, and how many of us actually exist in upper level positions. And you know, me working for Mount Sinai, one of the tasks that I just been assigned was to create a Black male initiative that will increase the numbers of people in mid to upper management levels. And that's a task in its own, but I've been around in this area for a while now where I'm starting to realize that there's not a lot of men, especially Black men, in these positions of management. Where there's a lot of Black women in these positions making good money, and there's a lot of men not in these positions. So how do you then take what you're saying, like there should be no gender roles, everybody should do their own thing, but then wind up getting a girl that who's in a high position, makes a lot of money, to start looking at you like, why can't you get it together? When you going to get it together? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's going to be very interesting out there, and that's not to discourage you or nothing like that, but it's a reality that I'm hoping that to continue to help you along the way to understand the corporate structure and finances and paying bills and budgeting and managing your credit so that you don't have to go through all the life lessons that I went through and that I'm still learning from. My job is to make sure your job is easier. So my final thoughts on the episode is I got a son who's about to be 20 and who'll soon be 21 before I know it. And your sister is about to turn 18, your other sister's about to turn 13, and you're about to have a new sibling on the way. So I'm just shocked at the cycle of life. I'm shocked at the reset button that I'm about to hit and experience this time again, because having you and your sister together was kind of like still a first time parenting thing.
Mm-hmm.
Having Anaya as a stepdaughter once I got married again, it was still like not having a full cycle. because she's still young. So I only really been around for about 6 years. So it's still feeling like the first time parenting. But this new baby situation is going to be a whole new cycle, a whole new experience. I could literally say I've done this before. You know what I'm saying? So it's interesting. So having you on the show and talking about manhood and seeing where you've grown, I'm impressed. I want to let you know I love you and I appreciate you. And there's a reason why I made you one of my best men at the wedding. You and my brother are my two closest people in my life. And just wanted to let you know I love you on the show and I love you off the show and I love you to the moon and back. And I appreciate you for joining us for this episode. All right.
All right, of course.
All right. So y'all, everybody that's watching, I hope you enjoyed this. There's an opportunity for me to sit back and talk to my son, the fruit of my loins. And this is the relationship DNA. And as you know, we'll try to get back to you soon. If you see Dom on the street, tell her get back on her grind. But we'll try to kick out more episodes, and I'll try to keep tapping people in instead of letting all this time go by, because I enjoy talking and I need people to talk to. I try to do a podcast on my own. I hate talking to myself. So thank y'all all for joining. We out.
We out.